Fantastic. Scott, we're not looking outside your window? So my only comment is that I was doing a conference call with Scott yesterday, and Scott actually has a superior view. He's about 2 blocks away from us on Brickell Avenue, and he's got a superior view of the bay in Miami. So
let me see if I can accommodate.
yeah, it looks pretty nice. I see a lot of palm trees. So so Scott, you can talk about ShiftPixy, and actually, just before you spoke, we had Sherwood Knight speaking about crowdfunding and reggae, and I think you guys did a reggae filing, etc. So why don't you tell us about ShiftPixy, what your history, what you've done, and where you guys are going, how 2021 looks for you?
Sure. Thanks, Marty, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to the group today. Greetings, everyone. As Marty pointed out, I'm across the bay from him in Miami. We just recently re-headquartered our company to Miami, and we did that for a couple of important reasons. And as I explain the business, you'll probably have a sense for some of that. ShiftPixy's story starts really with some observations both my co-founder and I made about the human capital markets. Both of us had spent decades in the human capital management space. And in that space, we would handle the HR and compliance stack and reporting stack for small to mid-sized businesses. And we did this with small to mid-sized businesses all across the country. And what we loved about it, a couple of things. Number one, it was a rack and stack revenue business where we could, as soon as we brought a client on, they would stay with us for years, and we did that with the next one and the next one. And so it was very easy to stack and build a significant reoccurring revenue. And the reason we could do that was because of how sticky this engagement was and how valuable it was to small business owners. What we came to realize is that once they were liberated from having to do these things in the dailies, that they didn't want them back. And so that was a great business for us to be in for, as I said, decades. But there's some things that happened in the marketplace that people weren't paying attention to. And what I'll do is I'm going to pull up my slide deck here and kind of go through some of our discoveries. One of the things that, it's always fun to do is to find big problems and solutions for these big problems. And so that's really what ShiftPixy was engineered to do. What we found, or what we discovered, was that in this space, there was a neglected part of the market that we typically stayed away from. Our contemporaries, by the way, in that human capital management space were people like TriNet, Insperity. ADP has a division that does this, as does Paychex, that handle the human capital management stack for companies. And but one of the rules of thumb was that you stayed away from part-time labor concentrations. And the reason you did that is because if I'm handling that stack for you, turnover becomes toxic for me. The expectation with any part-time labor-driven market historically had been we could expect 100% turnover. And so industries like restaurants and retail and some of the service trades would see 100% turnover. That was the historic benchmark. And the reason that you didn't, again, it wasn't just about handling the employee compliance and all the paperwork and the onboarding and offboarding and doing it with frequency. It was also we lost points of monetization. For example, health benefits and retirement benefits were not part of part-time labor construct, so we'd lose those points of monetization. But what we learned as we, and it's actually a fairly recent occurrence, that the problem that we saw develop really started after that first collapse of Wall Street in September of 2008. 2.6 million jobs were lost, and today, obviously, with COVID, that seems like a drop in the bucket. But what was significant to us at that point in time in September 2008 was this new designation that the US Department of Labor started to track. And it was called underemployed. And they gave a number to that, 8 million underemployed, which meant that their jobs or their projects had altered in such a way that that they had to find a way to reconstruct their income. And the tradition to reconstruct your income back then would have been to go to work in restaurants or retail or tend bar at nights and weekends to reconstruct their income. And most people that worked the capital markets back then remember this time frame very clearly, the September of 2008. But what most people don't pay attention to is what happened a few months later in March of 2009. And that's when Uber was born. And imagine this, for Uber, they're born into this perfect storm where now you had 8 million people that were underemployed that would normally have to hit the street to reconstruct their income, could now do that by flipping on their mobile phone and using their card to reconstruct their income. And as soon as this opportunity met despair, was also technology meeting and fixing a big problem that nobody paid attention to. But what more importantly, what happened at the birth of Uber and the birth of these types of platforms was it completely changed the rules of engagement in the part-time labor markets. And we could see this escalating as well because of the advent or the rise of smartphone technology. So some new technologies really came in and invaded the part-time labor markets. And some of these names.
Scott, I just want to jump in here for just one second real quick, because I use like almost all these services that you have listed here. But you know, what's interesting is that people have been projecting for a long time a labor shortage. And what you do seems to make the labor market far more efficient.
That's right.
Hopefully you'll address it as you keep on going.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, what we saw was that with the incursion of these new technologies and these new platforms and the way they created opportunity and the way they engaged people in these opportunities completely changed the part-time labor markets. And the other thing that was happening at the same time was this rise of the independent workforce. In 2019, there were 41 million people that considered themselves independent or self-employed. And of that population, about 24% of those were using one of these types of platforms to fill out their dance card. And of that population, 38% of those were millennials. But the projection is that by 2023, over 50% of the US workforce will be operating in some independent fashion. So this rapid rise of the independent workforce is really on everybody's radar right now. When we look at this market, the US part-time labor market, that's a total population right now about 28 million people. But we also see this as a hidden market. Everybody ignores this. It was very interesting spending a lot of time with institutional investors. And when we started talking about this market, they never understood what we were talking about. I said, here's the way to think about this. This is these are the baristas that hand you your coffee in the morning. These are the people that bus your tables in the restaurant. These are the people that are all around you that most people don't pay attention to. And again, from our vantage point, nobody services this trade. Nobody wants to because of high turnover. But what we saw in this opportunity was not just a $560 billion market that nobody was paying attention to, but technology had arrived at a time where we could take cutting edge technology and as Michael was talking about, leveraging machine learning and AI, which is what we're doing, to manage a workflow. And in this particular case, it's the part-time work week. So now we can leverage a very elegant technology, bring it back to the brick and mortar operators, and create their ability now to participate in the new labor markets without having to make any investment, and they're able to compete the same way in the same fashion that all the gig platforms are capturing workers now. For us, in this the way we monetize this, each shifter on our platform, we bill out at about $20,000 a year. That's kind of the basis for part-time labor wages, annualized. And for us, that produces about $1,200 in gross profit a year per shifter on our platform. So we think that we're really arriving at a perfect time, as to Marty's point about labor shortages. Now, for brick and mortar operators, now they can start competing for that same eroded labor base that is now fully adapted to these mobile technologies and these mobile services. And they can do that without making any investment. And our whole approach to this is to take a compliant employer approach. We're not entering the market in the ways that using independent contractors, which is going to continue to be a controversy for all these platforms. But we're really engineering this to minimize the job provider's administrative burdens by taking over that employer status and treating these people as W-2s. But we're also leveraging the technology to create real-time connections between the shift providers and those that are seeking shifts. And it's really designed around this whole new work ethic that has emerged because of the gig economy. What we try to tell operators that when we talk to them about this paradigm is they have to rethink human capital. It's no longer about what you have, it's about what you have access to. But we also talk to them about all the things that swirl around their business that have to do with the management and ownership of human capital. And our proposition is a fairly simple one. The mechanics are that they ship those responsibilities over to ShiftPixy and they don't own those anymore. And they also don't own the burden of labor fulfillment because while being on our platform. The other side of the equation is this is really meeting some of the new work ethic in the marketplace. What we're hearing from a lot of these gig economy workers is one of their motivations is they love being able to work on an on-demand basis, where they can work when they want, and they don't have to be tied to a particular location. And that goes to independence. They don't have to be tied to a particular location, a particular schedule, and also they can produce extra income instead of having to ask their boss for more hours. Let's say they have car insurance due at the end of the month. On a platform like ShiftPixy, they can cobble that extra income together. The other thing that we're hearing too is that they like the idea of being able to access opportunity anywhere and at any time, no matter what market. Let's say maybe they're going to school in New York, but they live in Texas. And on a platform like this, they can work while they're in school in New York, and then when they're on summer break or spring break in Texas. So there's a lot of nuances to this new work ethic that we're catering to. And what we're creating for the operators in this, we're highly verticalized. Of that population of 28 million that work part-time, half of those are in the restaurant and hospitality industry. And we verticalize in large markets, but we also verticalize around those types of the food service business. Because what you're getting is access to people that are similarly trained in safe food handling, as an example, and know their way around a kitchen. So there's not a big learning curve, and they're hard to find anyway. These one of the things we tell restaurant operators is the big problem for them right now is they can't find and they can't keep people. And so that's the problem that we're fixing, was this idea being that we share these employees in these local markets so that we create this live local on-demand workforce. When we started introducing this concept and started building out our technology, there was another phenomenon that was kind of happening to the restaurant operator community in particular, and it was the birth and advent of third-party delivery. And it's interesting that we're talking about this today because DoorDash has priced their IPO today. And there's a lot of interest and a lot of people watching these platforms. But what people weren't paying attention to, and we started kind of poking the bear there a little bit, asking our multi-unit operators why they would surrender their customer experience and their brand to a kid in a red golf shirt and cap. That didn't make any sense. And also what they were surrendering was their customer data. And we started asking that question amongst the operator community. And that's when we started hearing about all the horror stories about no food, cold food, half-eaten food, all manner of ick for the consumer, but the anger for which was rolling back to these local operators under these national brands. And to add insult to injury, they were giving up 30% of each ticket. So they were making no money on this and damaging their brand. So we looked at our human capital engagement and our technology stack, and we saw an opportunity to fix this second big problem for these restaurant operators. And said, what if we could facilitate self-delivery? And the process was to add some additional technology that would allow us to go in and intercept these online orders, turn them into a ticket, but designate a driver from the local staff there at the store and handle all the driver management responsibilities that are required to even get the commercial insurance coverage to cover delivery. So that now these operators could send a uniformed staff member out to deliver a brand attendant experience to the consumer. But more importantly, they also get to keep that 30% of commission that they were giving up. And when we introduced this concept and started building out the technology, it got everybody very excited. And it kind of changed. I like to tell people we were fishing with new bait. But what was interesting is we were introducing this, a lot of people were resistant to change, because to fix the two big problems that we're fixing for this community, they gotta get under the hood and make some changes. And so everybody would stop short. That wasn't until COVID hit. And this goes back to, one of the earlier speakers was talking about opportunity markets in the midst of COVID, and we're certainly one of those. Suddenly, we were deluged by all kinds of interest from the restaurant operator community and thought leadership, within the restaurant industry about they were just struggling to keep the lights on. So they saw us as a solution for changing their and rethinking their human capital needs, but also rethinking their connection to customers. And so self-delivery became a very big subject of conversation and continues to be so for us. And now, instead of doing outbound, sales or evangelism, if you will, now everything's coming inbound, and now it's a matter of just vetting opportunity and creating those. So one of the things that we did, we made sure that they understand that we're monetizing everything through the labor. So all the technology that we're providing for them, they don't pay for. That's very important for them. The other is speed of setup. And so we've tried to make it as friction-free as possible for these operators.